Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome special episode where I've brought with, again, another regular from the Sunflower Samurais, Daniel CorrEas. Dude, how are you?
Hi, happy to be here. Always happy to be here with a new and exciting deck.
Yes, and this
With
time,
Max Hype, with Max Hype.
bam, the hype himself, Maxx the Hype Nitro. So what we did is we got Yorgos to Tekla and I asked Daniel which one would you be interested in, and you picked Maxx the Hype Nitro. What drawn you to wanting to make a Maxx deck?
First of all, what we have to think is that now we have it in the game. We have 3 different mechanologists, and if you want to make a build, you have to be specialized on what dash deck. You cannot build a bad dash deck because you will be playing dash,
Yeah,
basically, if you're playing the old dash. So
yeah.
the thing that makes this deck special over other mechanologies decks is that it has a good flow of resources, and he can create a lot of hyperdrivers. So we can basically use all these hyperdrivers mechanic to make it to the maximum exponent. And the card that makes this deck competitive, in my opinion, is the Nitro Mechanoid. That
Right.
it requires a lot of hyperdrivers to work. So if you're playing with both versions of Dash or you're playing with Teklobosen, it's not easy to play this card. But when you are playing this deck, is quite easy.
Yeah, I bet, because you could just slam those hyper. You basically just making hyperdrivers from your hero ability, which is just like half the resources to make. But we'll get there. So Maxx the Hype Nitro. Let's go through some of the equipment. Now, you've got the Cogworks base legs, nice, cheap, easy, commoner legs from the Bright Light set. Why did you pick this one as the legs?
Yeah, this card says that you can gain one action point. That it's not that good when all your deck boosts, but when you are going to play the Nitro Mechanoid on that turn, you can spend 1 resource to do a double attack, so you can go full 12 in that turn. So it's not that setup turn is not like an off turn for you. You can do 1 boost attack and then go full 12, and you can make a lot of pressure in that turn.
Okay.
So, and obviously, what we want with all the equipments, maybe it's a little bit. I'm going too fast, but what we want in our equipments is not having blade break and destroying them. You want to keep them to build the Nitro Mechanoid.
Yeah.
So I will choose this over the other arcane barrier boots, the Achilles Accelerator.
Yeah.
I want to use it because at least we have an action.
Got ya. And
we have something to do with them.
So is it the threat of Tumultai a bit as well?
Excuse me?
Tumultai from Dromai, because I was going to say, what's the difference between the Achilles Accelerator and the Cogwork boots? Like, they both say gain an action point if you boosted, right? But one of them costs 1 resource, the other one is free.
Yeah, it's free, and it has Arcane Barrier, and you can use it at some matchups, such as Dromai, for example, as you said. But it requires to be destroyed. And if you want to play the Nitro Mechanoid, you have to put all your equipment under the Mechanoid to work. So if you lose your boots, you are not allowed to play that card.
Yeah, got ya. So basically, it's a way of doing the same thing without losing the boots.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. The Galvanic Bender. So, while this is under a permanent, the permanent has +1. I mean, Battle Worn 1. You're trying to make the Mechanoid. This seems like the perfect card, right?
Yeah, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. The breakpoints of 4 if you're playing against decks like Lexi at this point. Maybe won't be in the World Championship, but yeah, there are a lot of decks that use Snatch and things like that. It's free.
Yeah.
You can block with it and use it for the Mechanoid.
Awesome. So the Hyper X squared, is that what it's called? I don't know. Is that how it is? The Hyper X3, we'll call it that. Why this card? Why the motorbike helmet?
Yeah, it's people say that you want to play the Crown of Providence if you're going full boost, but this equipment is the only head piece that doesn't break when you blow with it, and it's Mechanoid.
Yeah.
So you have in the sideboard that will be for the future. We have the Arcane Barrier 2 version, but obviously this one can block for 1, so generically better for the rest of the matchups.
Pretty simple. What about the text on it when it says with the hyperdrivers going under this? Is that relevant?
I tried to build a deck around playing a lot of hyperdrivers, but it's not easy to put 3 or more hyperdrivers under it.
Right.
It has a trick if someone wants to try it, that if you put hyperdrivers under the Hyper X3, when you build the mechanoid, you have extra tax because the mechanoid checks the amount of cards that are under it. And hyperdrivers under Hyper X3 count for that,
Okay.
for the number of things under the mechanoid.
So it just adds more materials underneath it, and it's that weird sort of new ruling that's happening now, where which you will see with Evos as well. When Tekla turns into the Necropotent, the more you can get under it, the more tax you basically want to get. So it makes sense just to have a block 1 has a mechanologist keyword, which is the most important bit. If you happen to just get some under there, sweet, cool, makes it just that a little bit better. That's really cool. And then the Teklo Foundry Heart. I mean, how key is this in this matchup?
Obviously, is the thing that allows you to play easier the mechanoid and can make your turns easier. But it also has an additional way to play it, that at the beginning of the game, when you're hungry of resources, you can use the Tekla Foundry Heart to use the Maxx Deck Nitro ability and try to include more to build the hyperdrivers board as fast as you can, as you don't need as many resources. So you don't want to abuse about it because you want to find the Nitro mechanoids, but the construct Nitro mechanoids. But at the beginning of the game, you want to use it maybe in the first and second turn to have more resources and build your board as fast as you can.
Awesome. And then he's not using his wrench. He's using the old classic Teklo plasma pistol. Why is that?
Yeah. Banksy is a weapon that is really good in matchups when you want to go face and don't block too much. When you're playing against someone that doesn't do that, if you want to include more kits in your deck, the weapon is perfect. But as we want to use the mechanoid, the flow of the game is quite different. If you are playing the Teklo-Plasma pistol, what you want to do is to use the Maxx Deck Nitro ability to put a hyperdriver with 2 counters and don't crank it.
Right.
Because you want to build your board with a lot of hyperdrivers, because as soon as you draw the Nitro mechanic, you can play it. Teklo-Plasma pistol is good for off turns when you don't have you have to overblock and you want to just put 1 card in your arsenal, so you have the chance of just hitting for 2 and not. It doesn't require to use in your full hand. And it's also you want to do. There is 1 card that it will be the first one we can say that we can talk about is the High Octane. High Octane is the base of the deck at some point, because if you want to do a big Nitro mechanic turn, what you want to do is, as soon as you are built in the mech, you want to use the High Octane and do as many turns as you can, as many attacks as you can. You can maybe boost twice or 3 times and attack with the Nitro mechanoid 3 times and do a lot of damage. But it's a way to grant the number of action points you have. That's the reason why I run Teklo-Plasma pistol, because if you draw it during the game, you have something to invest in the amount of action points we have.
Cool. That's all the equipment and the weapons, and we talked a little bit about how we've got started with the actual main part of the deck, and we went through the high octanes, just like mega power turns, and it is again just generating loads of action points and then just using the gun or whatever just to slam loads of somewhat free attacks in a way. But you've been talking about this great big Nitro mechanoid. I think it's important that we actually talk about and actually bring this card up, because it's pretty much sounds like it's the whole base of the deck. It's not the whole soul strategy, I imagine, but it seems like a very big important, like, this is kind of the way you need to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The deck jump between a version with or without the Construct Nitro mechanoid, but this initial version, the one you are going to play against almost every matchup, is using the Construct Nitro mechanoid.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously it's a card. The flow of the game, as I said, what you want to do is to use Max and not crank the hyperdrivers. So you can, as at some point, you will use some of the cards that we will talk about them in the future. Uh, those cards can add counters to the hyperdrivers. So at some point, you can stack 3 hyperdrivers, combine it with all your items, and then you have 8 attacks during the game that go for 6 with overpower. How do you play this card? As soon as you have 2 hyperdrivers, you can use 1 boost attack, gain 2 resources,
Yeah.
use max Nitro ability, put 1 hyperdriver with crank, so you can take back your action point.
Yeah.
And with the Tecla Foundry Heart, you can have 4 resources to use the Nitro mechanism on do your turn.
Awesome.
Additionally, if you have 1 extraction point because you use your leg equipment, you can attack twice.
Oh, and then that's when it starts to really kick off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's the sort of the game plan really there. So let's go through some of the. I imagine a lot of these cards are there to serve that role of boosting, basically, isn't it? Just boost straight damage. And then there's a few little trick cards in there that just obviously synergizes very well with boosting, i.e. maximum velocity. But let's just go through just the bread and butter boost cards. We'll start off with the jump start. If you control a hyperdrive, this costs 1 less. It's pretty well. There you go. It's a zipper hit basically, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I say that these kind of cards can make this deck better than Dash going full boost, because when Dash have 1 cyber hit, we have 2.
Yeah.
And we have a second version of a lot of cards that are really good at ratios. Cards like Super Hit, or like Throttle, like 0 to 60. So yeah, Jumpstart is one of those cards that are discounted by the number of. Sorry, it's discounted if you control an hyperdriver.
Yeah, if you just
So
control one, it costs 1 less. So
yeah, so you can do big turns with very few cards and still doing the setup of the hyperdrivers.
yeah, absolutely. So again, zipper hit, very simple, 1 for 5. We'll just say that, and then you've got the yellow versions as well. So I take it it's just good rate, 1 for 4.
Yeah, 1 for 4, and as I said, it's a card that can make you maintain the hyperdrivers.
Yeah.
There are many other cards in the game that allows you to put 1 extra counter on the hyperdriver to make you build the constructed mechanoid, but all those cards are a little bit random in my opinion, and these cards are absolutely secure. It's also a 4-for-1 that doesn't boost, so you don't have to burn your deck down. I mean, only with 1 boost you can do your turn and build the hyperdriver, put 1 counter, and do a big turn, maybe combining with the pistol, maybe. So you can do. You don't have to boost that many cards, so you are lowering the risk of banishing the Nitro mechanoid.
Yeah, that's fair. And then again, we talked a little bit throttles again, 2 for 6, pretty straightforward. Doing the same game plan. It's a boost. 060s. I mean, I've never seen a boosty kind of deck that doesn't have a 060. I mean, the rate is just very good, right? And you went for the full rainbow suite. How come?
Yeah, the super hit. Do you mean
0 to 60?
0 to 60 is just it's a zero card boost that it's quite good to start the turn if you have hyperdrivers because you can gain resources.
Yeah.
You can use 0 to 60, gain 1 or 2 resources with the hyperdriver, use the Tecla Foundry Heart, and you don't need blues to play your turn. So zero costers are quite relevant if you are playing full boost, and especially 0 to 60, you can use it in both versions, the Nitro Mechanoid or the full boost version, because the ratio is quite good. Even the yellow card is better than other boost cards, because in this new set, we have a lot of cards that go 0 for 3 boost and have a not relevant ability at all. And then you see 0 to 60 that is a yellow. That is basically the same, but it picks yellow, so why not use it?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll also rev up, which is pretty much the jump start Jumpstart is zipper hit. Rev up is throttle. It costs one less if you have a hyperdriver, 2 for 6, and it boosts. There's a lot of very
Second version of throttle. That's all.
That's it. It's a lot of very similar cars that are just like, yeah, we're just it's just more of these same very good on rate stuff.
Yeah, when we're talking about numbers, these are the best cards.
Yeah, T-Bone. Ah,
T-Bone.
T-Bone in reds and blues. If you boosted, it's time to start giving up some of your equipment. So how come you put T-Bones in?
T-Bone, as many people know, has really strong combinations with the Magnetic Shockwave, in that it's a blue card that we are running in the deck. T-Bone says that if you have boost, and obviously that includes his own boost, the opponent has to block with one equipment. So at the point that you can combine 1 or 2 T-Bones with the Magnetic Shockwave, to some decks you can basically destroy all the equipment they control. If you're playing against Ranger, for example, you want to break the New Horizon, that's a really cool combination that you can use to maybe not win the game, but you have you are advancing in the right in the right way.
Yeah, no.
If you can do this.
Yeah.
And it has, maybe if you want to talk about Twin Drive, that is the next card.
Yeah, I was going to say we just wanted to just go through some of these like very easy to just follow, pretty down the line commons. But now we're moving over to the beefy power ones. The Twin Drive. I mean, it boosts twice.
It boosts twice, and it has mixed a slot in the deck that I wanted to talk about this and T-Bone together,
Okay.
If we're talking about T-Bone, I had a discussion in the Spanish channel, and they said, why don't you run the yellow version of T-Bone with this deck? And what I think is that you have mixed this slot with Twin Drive, because what you want to do with the T-Bones in general is just combining them with a Magnetic Shockwave. You want to use one T-Bone, then one T-Bone, then the Magnetic Shockwave. But now that we have Twin Drive, it's an enabler of some other synergies. And if you want to play T-Bone with Twin Drive, you boost twice, and then you use the Magnetic Shockwave. You can destroy all your opponent equipments, because he has to block with three equipments plus one with the T-Bone. So you're doing exactly the same result, and you're also mixing. You are also adding more power to your deck, because you are removing a 0 for 2 and you're adding a 5 for 2.
Yeah.
You have more damage. So in general, this card can maybe remove the yellow T-Bones from the builds.
Yeah.
Maybe if you want to go all in and try to destroy the equipments of your opponent, you can include it. But I don't think yellow T1 is not relevant at all.
No. Plus, as well, Twin Drive also has some other synergies, doesn't it? With another really cool card. It's I love the flexibility of what a double boost means, because there's a lot of the time the cards are based around like, oh, if you boosted like X amount of times, this happens, and it's quite tricky because it's the amount of times have you played a card. So if I played 3 cards in a row, then we can play maximum velocity. But Twin Drive is 2 for 1, so that 2 for 1, like you explained about T-Bone and Magnetic Shockwave, it just opens up so many more doors with less cards.
Yeah, exactly. And maximum velocity, it's a card that you generally don't want to include in your deck if you're not going full boost.
Yeah.
But at the end, now that you have Twin Drive, you can just arsenal it, and if you draw the right hand with maximum velocity, one other boost card and a blue one, as you said, you also have the resources from the hyperdriver, so it's quite easy to play.
Yeah.
It's quite easy.
It's really scary now that maximum velocity was one of those cards that you're like, it's really strong but kind of hard to pull off, and now it's like, this isn't that hard to pull off now. It's not easy, but it's definitely not as tricky as it used to be.
Also, we have a good synergy with the Harpoon, with the Boost Wave Harpoon.
Oh, yeah.
That it also checks the number of times you have boost. So with Blue Pitch, you can use the Twin Drive, then use the Harpoon and look at 3 cards of your opponent hand. We can also, if you have boost twice and then you use a zero cost, for example, then a twin drive, then a harpoon, you can look at all your opponent's hand and discard one card. It's
Oh,
a really powerful play.
yeah. And these are all these really good fun plays that you can do in Max. And we're not even doing we're not even turned into a mech yet. These are just like some just strong plays that you're just doing while you're playing the game. It's really, really cool. So we went through a lot of these, but we haven't talked about recharge. So put a steam counter on a hyperdrive you control. The next attack you boost this turn gets +4. You went for the reds and the yellows. The yellows give it +3. How come? How come you went for a recharge?
Yeah, about this card, it's I think we talked about that earlier, but I think I missed that. When you have the recharge, what you do is just uh, making your hyperdriver maintain one more turn.
Yeah.
If you have max, if you want to use the ability, you have to boost. So basically, you put one hyperdrive with two counters. So the life of that hyperdriver will be 2 turns.
Mm-hmm.
If you draw one hyperdrive or one recharge, what you can do is just make it last one more turn.
Yeah.
Then if you have an hyperdriver 3 turns, another one 2, another one 1, you can use the Nitro mechanism quite easy.
Yeah.
There are some cards in this expansion that make boost. If this card is boost, you can put one counter in an hyperdriver. Those cards are a little bit random for me because you cannot play your turns playing around it. And I think this is the most established way to make your hyperdrivers keep on board. And it doesn't. Many people is playing the hyperdriver, the red or the yellow version to put it on field, but I think this card just makes 2 slots, doing an extra buff and also making you making you do big turns. If you combine it with a throttle or saber hit or wherever, you're doing a really big turn with this.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Just getting that buff and being able to just get that, like you said, that additional resource on a hyperdriver to keep it around for that 1 turn longer. It's very, very, very strong.
If you want to make the numbers, this is basically a 0 for 4 because you're spending one resource, but you will get it back on the next turn.
What about the block 2?
Your hyperdriver, yeah, it blocks 2, but the vast majority of the deck blocks 3, so it's not a drawback for it.
No, it's very minimal. It's not like the old Rune Blaze where they've got to stack a lot of 2s in there. But no, that's really cool. So we've got some of these last little cards here. The Crankshaft. We'll talk about Crankshaft. I like Big Bertha. We'll do that. We'll do that near to the end. So Crankshaft blue. How come you? Is it just a? Is it? Well, how come you pick this as a blue? I assume it's because of the bit around about hyperdrives, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Bertha and Crankshaft are basically the same card, but with different cost.
Yeah.
They will block for 3. They pitch blue. You don't really want to play your blue cards in general. You want to use it to block because you want to make the game longer to find the Nitro Mechanite. So you don't really care about the blues.
Yeah.
As I said, you can include the yellow or red version of those cards because you can play it in the rainbow. With a rainbow color and try to make your hyperdrivers maintain on board, but as I said, it's a little bit random. I don't like it.
That's fair enough.
Maybe if you want to abuse, but if you want to boost, you are increasing the chances of boosting the Nitro Mechanite, and that's something that I think we don't want with this deck.
No.
But yeah, the blue version are just free, because you're going to play it and you're going to include it in your deck. You have to, and just to say we're playing 15 blues because I think that once the hyperdrivers are rolling, you don't need that many resources.
No, I know. I noticed that actually that you're just generating a lot of resources from what you're making on the board, basically. So I was thinking this is actually quite a low blue count. And then the last load of blues is the magnetic shockwave, which we did actually go through a bit. It synergizes with the T-Bone. We talked about the synergies it has with the twin drive. It's just a blue block 3 that has some, now the text is starting to get more relevant because of the amount of with the inclusion of twin drive.
Yeah, It's the worst part about this card is that it gains from Crucible,
Yeah.
and it's not that easy to find it. Obviously, it's something that could win you some games. Maybe you would play it maybe one on in 10 games, so it's not that relevant.
Mm.
If people want to swap this card for other card, you can include any other blue. The deck will will perform exactly the same.
Yeah.
You're closing the door of this card, but in general, you won't play it. But when you do, you're almost winning the game.
Awesome. Awesome. Right. Well, that's all about the main board stuff. Now let's go through to the sideboard. We talked a little. So we talked a bit about Banksy. We talked a bit about the Achilles heel. I imagine the Visitronic Model I, otherwise known as the Arcane Barrier headpiece. It's the
Yeah,
Arcane Barrier, right? For
yeah.
yeah,
For Icelander and Kano, obviously,
yeah.
that's the headbuild we want to include. As a side note, when you're playing against someone who makes arcane damage,
Mm-hmm.
when you're playing against Icelander and Kano especially, but maybe against other Rune Blades, you don't want to remove your arcane barrier because if you play the Nitro Mechanic against Kano, you are done.
Yeah.
He's going to do all the wildfire combo. So yeah, as soon as you include, especially the Visitronic model, uh, as soon as you include it, you won't use the Nitro Mechanite,
No,
okay?
you won't be a mech anymore.
Don't do it. Don't
No,
do it.
you'll get one shot in an instant. And then I take it. Do you? What about the rune blades though? When you're doing the again, do you turn into the mech when you're playing against rune blades?
If you're playing against Rumbless, I think that the Arcane Barrier from the Achilles accelerators, the AB1, it should be enough to play against them. So if and you can still run the Nitro Mechanoid if you want. You can swap between a full boost version or a Nitro Mechanoid version. But if you see that you're playing against Viscera and he has 10 or or 50 runes, please don't
Don't turn into the
don't
mech.
don't use the Mechanoid.
Don't
Use
make
it
it free for
or
him.
use it to block.
It'll be free. Okay, and now we've got just a nice little tidy small sideboard slot here. I can see that you've got exactly 60 cards in the main deck, and we've got 12 cards that you put in the inventory. Let's go through them, and then you just tell us when you'd swap these cards in for specific matchups. So we'll start with the backup Protocol Red. You've got 3 of them. How come you've picked? How come you picked these, and why are they in the sideboard, and who's it for?
The main idea of the sideboard is just swapping between the full boost or the Nitro Mechanic version.
Mm.
This card is, for me, it was under the radar. As soon as the first time I saw it, I thought that it was a draft or sealed card
We
that
all
could be
did.
played. Yeah, so as soon as I saw the potential of this card, I thought that it could fit perfectly in a full boost build.
Mm.
The reason for me is that Backup Protocol puts an attack action card from your discard pile to your hand. First of all, it has Crank, so it can trigger. It can make the requirement of Bansky to be played. You
Right.
can you can use the Backup Protocol, crank it, and go with Bansky for 3. And if it hits, you can put one counter on your Hyperdriver or your Backup Protocol to keep it rolling during the turns.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the second one is that you can recycle your best cards that are basically Twin Drive and Maximum Velocity. If you want to play against someone and you want to go full boost, the main idea of this card is that you can play 3, 4, or maybe 5 maximum velocities in the game. So you can play defensively because, as you said, when we analyze the recharts, the vast majority of the cards of the deck block for 3. So if you're playing that strategy, you can just set up big turns, and if the opponent just want to go fatigue, you can detect it and say, okay, I'm going to use my protocols to put back my twin drives for the next rounds. And then if I draw the maximum velocity, or maybe the other one, you can do a really big turn.
Mm.
And the vast majority of the decks of the game cannot afford playing against a turn that goes for 4, 4, 3, and 10.
Mm.
You're pushing damage.
Yeah.
So it's your way to finish those games.
Cool. Big shot. 3 for 6. If you boost it 2 more times, it turns into a 3 for 8. I mean, it's wounded. We're talking wounded bull now. This is wounded bull numbers. So is it just quite as simple as it's just a nice big, big attack if you're just going for the boost game?
Yeah, it's the little brother of the maximum velocity. You
Yeah,
are increasing the number of finishers. This is looking like a ninja deck,
yeah,
but yeah, it's a mechanologist deck. You're increasing the number of finishers in your deck. So this one goes into combination with Batak Protocol perfectly. You can use it to push a lot of damage. So your opponents, when they try to just block and say, okay, I can fatigue them, you are including cards that go for. If you include a lot of cards that go for 5, 6, or 8, or 10, maybe you can fatigue them. I mean, if you boost,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you put a lot of cards in your deck.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And then expedite boost when this hits. Put an item with 0 cost or 1 from your hand into the arena. So why have you put this in to the sideboard, and who's it for?
Uh, I found that I needed, if I go with the full boost version, if you want to enable the big shot and the maximum velocity, you need more 0-4x in
Mm.
your deck. At this point, we're running 12 in the main deck, and we can include 3 more with this. That makes 15 cards that go 0-4x boost. So that can make really easy to play those cards.
Okay.
So it's more that an enable more than the effect. There are other cards that go cost 0, have boost, but in general the effect is not relevant
No.
because it interact with with items or whatever. So Expedite maybe can work with backup protocol to have extra action points, or maybe you can use it to avoid boosting one turn. So it's fine.
Yeah.
You
No.
can use because I mean you can use the backup protocol, have an extra action point because you crank it, and maybe you can use the ability of Maxx Nitro that doesn't have go again, put the hyperdriver with 2 counters and keep going with your turn.
Mm. Mm. It's very strong, and they don't know what's in your hand. So it is quite that. All right, I'll take it. You're like, are you sure I might have an item that the cost of it, even though you know that it's not, but at the same time, it's still just fulfilling your purposes of a 0 for the 3. What would you take out for, like, what would you take out to put this in? Like, what sort of, if you wanted to say, oh, I need to sort of increase the density of my boost attacks, like, what are we starting to chip away here?
The we 12 cards between versions.
Mm,
What we do is include all the sideboard,
yeah,
and then we can remove the Nitro Mechanoid, the High Octane, and the package of recharges, and
right,
include these cards,
all right,
just to include the density of boost cards, and as I said, establish the way you play the maximum velocity and the big shot.
sure. Teclo Pummelo is the last one. You got 3 of them, and what's the story with the Teclo Pounder?
Uh, as we're running 15 blues on the main deck, when we're playing full boost, maybe we are more hungry of resources because we cannot abuse of Maxx Nitro too much because maybe we have to crank it a lot as we're playing Bansky. So
Yeah,
as we remove 6 yellow cards, that we are removing the Nitro Mechanoid and the yellow version of Richards, I found that I needed more resources. So I included Cyclo Pounder, that it's also a setup card, what we can use with backup protocol to set up big turns. So we can do an off turn, playing backup protocol with Crank, then play a Cyclo Pounder, and then using the backup protocol to put 1 attack back in your hand. And you can set up 3 very big turns for your next attacks. So as I said, it's a tool to play against fatigue, and it's also blue card.
awesome. Wow, there you go. That was nice and quick. Just like Max, the boost we boosted right through this deck. It was it's very clean. It's not like when we're talking about Azalea or maybe even Iceland or something like. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of moving complex parts with this. With Max, it's pretty straightforward. You just slam, don't you? You just throw cards at him, and it's just trying to navigate and manage those hyperdrivers. But the cards itself are not exactly like complicated, if that makes sense.
They are not complicated, but the ability of Max requires a lot of knowledge about the game because sometimes you are spending resources to create hyperdrivers, and you have a lot of hyperdrivers, and you feel like you are doing nothing with all those resources.
Got ya.
So it's easier and straightforward from the deck building side. But as soon as you play it, you see a lot of lines, especially with Bansky, that requires you to do a lot of cranks. So you have to calculate and moderate about how many resources do you want to your next turn.
Mm.
And that's not that easy. I think it's not. I feel like sometimes I'm doing the ground decisions when I play in it because I have a blue and three hyperdrivers, and I say, oh, but I don't have that many cards in my deck that requires that many resources. Maybe
Yeah.
I could crank it earlier, 1 or 2 turns earlier, and try to push with Bansky.
Yeah.
Try to add more on hits and maybe more pressure.
Okay. So, like you said, the deck tech looks simple, but it's one of those you got to play it, and then you soon see the complexities of making those decisions. Well, regardless, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to break down your Maxx Deck tech. The link is below. Go check it out. Take it to your armories and play with it. As and when, anywhere you want. Anything you want to sign off on, Daniel?
I want to sign up for the Spanish community and the and the Sunflower Samurai that are always helping me to make these lists. And yeah, thanks to everyone. As you know, I can answer the comments if you have any questions about this deck.
Awesome.
So always a pleasure.
Dude, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy it.